In 1700, Liverpool was a muddy footnote on the edge of the world. Around 6,000 people, a pool of tidal water, a handful of streets, and a river that fought every ship that tried to use it. Nobody was watching Liverpool. Nobody thought they should. 1 century later, it was the most powerful port on earth. What happened in between is not a comfortable story. It is a story of engineering genius, of fortunes built on mass suffering, of a city that kept shattering every limit placed on it, and of a single decision made by one man in a chamber in London that would change the course of industrial history forever. To bring this world back to life, we have used artificial intelligence to reconstruct how Liverpool looked and worked during these extraordinary years. The visuals you will see are built from historical research, but AI-generated images carry their own imperfections. What we can guarantee is that the history behind them is rigorously sourced. If you spot a detail that feels wrong, we welcome the conversation in the comments. This is Liverpool at the height of its ambition and the height of its shame. Liverpool's merchants had a problem. The River Mersey had tides that rose and fell by nearly 10 metres. Ships arrived on the flood, loaded or unloaded against the clock, and then lay stranded in the mud when the water pulled back. Cargo was spoiled. Time was lost. Rival ports were pulling ahead. In 1710, the town decided to do something that had never been done anywhere in the world. They commissioned an engineer named Thomas Steers to build a dock that would hold the water, a sealed basin where ships could float permanently, independent of the tides, loading and unloading in safety at any hour. It cost £12,000. It went double over budget. It nearly broke the corporation financially. It opened on the 31st of August 1715. A capacity of 100 ships, 3.5 acres of still controlled water in a city built on one of the most violent tidal rivers in Europe. The writer Daniel Defoe visited shortly after and wrote that its like was not to be found anywhere in England. He was right, it was not to be found anywhere in the world. The old dock was the first commercial wet dock ever built. And it worked. Within a generation, Liverpool's population would quadruple. The town that nobody was watching had just invented the modern port. The dock made Liverpool rich. What made Liverpool the most powerful trading port in Britain was something darker. From around 1730, Liverpool merchants discovered the extraordinary profits of the triangular trade. Ships left Liverpool carrying manufactured goods, cloth, iron, guns to the west coast of Africa. There those goods were exchanged for enslaved people. Those people were transported across the Atlantic in conditions of extreme violence, and the ships returned to Liverpool loaded with sugar, tobacco and cotton. The numbers are documented in full. Over its history, nearly 5,000 slaving voyages departed from Liverpool. At the height of the trade, Liverpool accounted for more than 40% of all European slaving activity. In 1799, a single year, over 45,000 people were transported from Africa against their will, on Liverpool ships, financed by Liverpool money, insured by Liverpool firms. The town's grand streets, its civic buildings, its expanding docks, they were built on this. The wealth was real, the human cost behind it was also real, and it was vast. Not everyone in Britain accepted what Liverpool had built its fortune on. From the 1780s, a national campaign for abolition began gathering force. Its investigators visited the ports. They documented the conditions. They brought evidence before Parliament year after year. In Liverpool, the resistance was fierce. The city's elected representatives argued in Parliament that the trade was essential to Britain's prosperity. When one abolitionist campaigner came to Liverpool to gather testimony from sailors on the docks, the hostility of the merchant community was such that he later wrote he feared for his life on the waterfront. In 1807, Parliament voted. The slave trade within the British Empire was abolished. Liverpool's merchants had fought it until the final session. Now they had no choice but to adapt. The Great Reconversion began, toward cotton, toward passengers, toward the enormous industrial north that was exploding just 30 miles away in Manchester. The port did not slow, it accelerated. If one event marks the moment Liverpool stopped being a powerful port and became the engine of a new industrial world, it is the 15th of September, 1830. On that day, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway opened, the first steam-powered inter-urban passenger railway in the history of the world. 8 locomotives, thousands of spectators, the Prime Minister himself in a carriage. The crowd lined the route for the entire 30 miles. Halfway to Manchester, the locomotive stopped to take on water. A group of dignitaries stepped down onto the track. One of them, the Member of Parliament for Liverpool, crossed toward the Prime Minister's carriage to shake his hand. He did not see the locomotive approaching on the adjacent line. It struck him. He died that evening, the first person killed by a passenger train in recorded history. The ceremonies continued. The trains arrived in Manchester, and the world entered the railway age, an age that Liverpool had opened at a cost that no one had planned for. Through the middle of the 19th century, Liverpool became something without precedent, a port through which the modern world was passing in both directions. Cotton flowed in from America, finished goods flowed out. The great shipping lines were born here. The Albert Dock opened in 1846, the first fully fireproof warehouse complex ever built, with the world's first hydraulic cranes cutting ship turnaround time in half. And people. In the 5 months following July 1847, close to 300,000 Irish men, women and men passed through Liverpool, fleeing the catastrophe of the famine. Most were in conditions of extreme poverty and illness. Tens of thousands never made it further. They stayed, settled into the expanding port districts, and changed the character of the city permanently. Over the course of the century, more than 9 million emigrants passed through Liverpool's docks on their way to America. Liverpool was not just a British city, it was the exit point for an entire world in motion. If you want to support this channel and help us bring more lost cities back to life, becoming a member is the most direct way to do that. Every contribution makes the next video possible. When the American Civil War broke out in 1861, Liverpool found itself at the centre of a diplomatic crisis. Shipyards on the Mersey were quietly building vessels for the Confederate Navy. Warships launched under the flag of a foreign rebellion, funded by the same cotton trade that had sustained Liverpool for generations. The last Confederate naval vessel surrendered not in an American port, but on the River Mersey in November 1865. The war ended where so much of its commerce had begun. By the final decades of the 19th century, Liverpool had become something its founders in 1207 could not have imagined in any fever dream. 7 miles of continuous docks running north to south along the Mersey. A city of over 500,000 people, 40% of the entire maritime trade of the British Empire passing through a single port. In 1905, Liverpool's trade was valued at £237 million, behind only London and ahead of New York. The wealth was visible in stone, St. George's Hall, the Walker Art Gallery, streets of Georgian and Victorian civic architecture that signalled deliberately that this was no longer a provincial town. This was a world city. And on the waterfront, at the very tip of the pier head, where the Mersey opened to the sea, the foundations were being laid for 3 buildings that would become the most recognised skyline in Britain. A city built on a muddy pool, on a tidal river, on a decision to hold back the water, was preparing to announce itself to the world in the most permanent way it knew. The age of the docks was not over. It had in many ways just begun.